Elon Musk leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled together, eyes narrowing as if he were peering into some unseen dimension. He had always been a man of science, of numbers, of logic. Rockets obeyed physics, electric cars followed circuits, and artificial intelligence obeyed algorithms. Yet, here he was, speaking in a tone that surprised even his closest associates, discussing the notion of destiny, of divine orchestration. God matched you two for a reason, he said, and the words carried a weight that neither he nor they could dismiss lightly. It was one thing to speak of probabilities, to speak of calculated risks in business and life. It was another to imply that two human beings, with their flawed, unpredictable emotions, had been guided by something far greater than themselves. The room fell silent. People who were used to Musk speaking of Mars and neural interfaces were now grappling with the idea that there might be some higher algorithm at work, some divine calculus they had never considered. "I'm serious," he continued, leaning forward, the intensity in his eyes almost blinding. "Every encounter you've ever had, every choice you've ever made, was preparing you for this. You can call it luck, chance, coincidence, but I call it purpose." The words floated in the air, heavy, charged, almost electric, much like the atmosphere at his launch facilities before a rocket roared into the sky. No one dared interrupt him. There was a reverence, a fear almost, because when Elon Musk spoke in this tone, it wasn't marketing hype or casual philosophical musing. He spoke with the gravity of someone who had stared into the void of space, who had contemplated life's fragility on a planetary scale, and who believed, in that moment, that even the most intimate human connections were part of a grand design. People nodded, some nervously, some skeptically, but all were aware that he wasn't done. "Look," he said, shifting slightly, "I know it's hard to accept. You've been hurt before. You've made mistakes. You've doubted yourself, doubted the world, doubted the very possibility that anything could be meaningful. I've doubted that too. I've stared at failures that would have crushed lesser men. I've watched rockets explode on launch pads, billions wasted in an instant, and yet I kept going. Why? Because even in failure, even in chaos, there is a thread, a pattern that you may not see at first, but it exists. And this is the same with people." There was a pause, a long one, as if the room itself was waiting for the revelation to unfold. Elon leaned back, rubbing the bridge of his nose, and then continued. "You meet someone, and it feels random. A glance, a smile, a conversation that could have happened anywhere, anytime. But it didn't. It happened now, and it happened with this person. Why? Because the universe, whatever forces are orchestrating it, decided that this was the moment, and this was the person. Everything before was preparation. Every heartbreak, every triumph, every decision you regretted, every choice you celebrated, was steering you toward this encounter. You are optimized for it. Not by chance, but by design. Some people in the room began to fidget. The language of destiny wasn't what they expected from someone who regularly discussed colonizing Mars or designing autonomous vehicles. But Elon didn't care about their discomfort. "Think about it," he said. "You could have met thousands of people in 1,000 ways, but you didn't. You met this one person, in this exact context. At this exact moment. There's a reason. And if you ignore it, if you dismiss it, you miss out on the exponential potential of your life." Human relationships are like technology. They have compounding effects. The right relationship, the right partnership, can accelerate your growth, your understanding, your happiness, exponentially. The wrong one can slow you down, confuse you, or even destroy you. But when it's right, it's almost like magic, though not magic in the childish sense. It's like physics. It's inevitable. It follows rules that you may not understand, but the results are undeniable. Elon's gaze swept across the room, and it felt as if he was speaking directly into each person's soul, pulling them into a conspiracy of meaning that few dared to acknowledge. "I know people will tell you this is nonsense," he said. "They'll say it's superstition, fantasy, wishful thinking. But I've calculated probabilities, modeled systems, predicted outcomes, and what I'm telling you is not contrary to science. It is the ultimate system. It's the one that encompasses everything, your emotions, your experiences, your connections. If you pay attention, if you listen, you realize that nothing is random. You are being guided, even if you don't consciously recognize it." One of the listeners, a young engineer, raised a hand, hesitantly. "Are you saying God chose who we fall in love with?" Elon's smile was faint, almost imperceptible, a mix of irony and seriousness. "I'm saying that some force, call it God, the universe, fate, destiny, has arranged the sequence of events so that certain connections are not accidents. They are designed. They are inevitable. And if you act with awareness, if you recognize the significance, you can navigate your life in a way that aligns with that design, rather than fighting it blindly." He leaned forward again, eyes glinting with a rare, almost manic intensity. "And here's the shocking truth. Most people live their entire lives ignoring this. They stumble through encounters, they treat relationships as disposable, accidental, irrelevant. They fail to see the patterns that are screaming at them, the signs that are almost blindingly obvious if you're paying attention. They dismiss intuition, gut feelings, serendipity, synchronicity, and wonder why life feels like chaos. But for those who pay attention, who recognize the moments of alignment, there's a shortcut to fulfillment, to success, to meaning. You meet the right person, at the right time, and everything changes. The trajectory of your life is altered irreversibly, profoundly, in ways you cannot even begin to calculate. A murmur ran through the room, and Elon's voice softened, almost intimate. "I've seen it happen in my own life," he said. "I've met collaborators, partners, friends, and even adversaries who seemed coincidental but were anything but. Each encounter was a vector, a direction, a push that shaped the outcome of my work, my vision, my reality. And it wasn't luck. It was alignment. The universe, God, destiny, whatever word resonates with you, put us in the right place at the right time to meet the people we were meant to meet." It's terrifying to realize that you're not entirely in control, but it's also exhilarating. Because it means that some of the weight of your life, some of the chaos, is not yours to carry. It means there is order in the system, a hidden intelligence, and your job is to recognize it and move with it, not against it. Elon's tone shifted subtly, becoming almost conspiratorial, as if sharing a secret that only a select few could comprehend. And this is the part most people will never admit, because it's uncomfortable. It's humbling. You are not the center of your universe. You are a node in a network, a point in a design that stretches far beyond you. Every person you meet, every choice you make, every connection you form, is part of an equation that you are only beginning to understand. And if you dismiss it, you diminish yourself. You reduce the potential of what could be, of what is meant to be. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "That's why you feel certain things so intensely. That's why some encounters feel like destiny, like they've been written into your DNA, encoded into your very being. That's why you can't explain it logically, rationally, mathematically. Because it is not a human design. It is beyond you. It is divine." The room was silent now, every person grappling with the enormity of what Elon had said. Some were skeptical, some were moved, some were terrified. The notion that their lives, their loves, their choices, could be orchestrated by a higher intelligence was both exhilarating and disconcerting. Elon stood, a figure of contradiction, scientist and mystic, futurist and prophet. "So," he said, finally, his voice firm, decisive, "when you meet someone and it feels right, don't dismiss it. Don't overthink it. Don't reduce it to mere coincidence or chemistry. Pay attention. Engage. Explore. Because the truth is more shocking than you can imagine. God, or whatever force you believe in, matched you for a reason. And recognizing that reason, honoring it, is the single most important act of your life. It is the moment where chance becomes destiny, where randomness becomes purpose, where life itself becomes meaningful." He sat back down, eyes glinting, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. And in that silence, the message hung in the air, almost tangible, almost like a charge of electricity. It was a truth that was simple yet profound, terrifying yet liberating, impossible to ignore. The world outside continued as it always had, indifferent, chaotic, unpredictable. But inside that room, for those who listened, for those willing to see, a revelation had been shared, that human connection, love, partnership, and alignment were not mere accidents. They were the design of forces far greater than oneself, and to ignore them was to ignore the very potential of life itself. And perhaps, just perhaps, the most important lesson of all was not to control the universe, not to bend reality to one's will, but to recognize the moments when the universe was already guiding you, and to follow, with courage, humility, and awe, wherever that guidance led. Because sometimes, the rockets don't just go to space. Sometimes, they guide your heart, your soul, your very destiny. And that, Elon Musk said with finality, that is the shocking truth. After the meeting, the words Elon had spoken lingered in the minds of everyone in the room like a low hum, vibrating just beneath their conscious awareness. No one spoke at first. The hum grew louder, echoing in the emptiness between them, filling every corner with an inexplicable weight. The young engineer who had asked the question earlier found herself staring out the window, trying to make sense of what had been said. She could see the city lights flickering below, cars moving in their precise but chaotic patterns, people living lives that seemed, from a distance, entirely random. And yet, a strange resonance settled over her mind, a sense that maybe, just maybe, the people she had met, the relationships she had abandoned, the ones she had pursued, were all part of a hidden equation she had never fully understood. Elon watched her quietly. He always noticed, always observed, even when he seemed lost in thought. Don't mistake skepticism for weakness, he said softly, more to himself than to anyone else. Doubt is healthy. It is the engine of discovery. But don't let doubt blind you to patterns that are screaming at you. He paused, then added, some things can't be solved with logic. Some things require surrender. That word, surrender, had a subtle weight. It wasn't giving up. It wasn't defeat. It was alignment. It was recognizing that sometimes, the optimal path in life isn't to force the outcome, but to move in harmony with forces larger than oneself. Later that evening, the engineer found herself walking alone through the city streets. The neon glow reflected off the wet asphalt, and she thought about her life, the choices, the regrets, the moments she had dismissed as trivial but which now seemed like critical vectors in an unseen algorithm. She remembered the chance meeting with a colleague months ago, one that had seemed inconsequential at the time. They had talked for 10 minutes, laughed awkwardly, then gone their separate ways. But now, in the quiet hum of the city night, she realized that encounter had changed the trajectory of her life. It had shifted her perspective, nudged her toward a decision she might otherwise never have made, guided her toward someone she hadn't yet recognized as essential. Elon's words replayed in her mind like a recording, each repetition revealing nuances she had missed the first time. You meet someone, and it feels random. A glance, a smile, a conversation that could have happened anywhere, anytime. But it didn't. It happened now, and it happened with this person. Why? Because the universe, whatever forces are orchestrating it, decided that this was the moment, and this was the person. Everything before was preparation. She shivered. There was a precision to it, a kind of mathematical elegance that defied traditional logic. Life wasn't chaos. It was a pattern, a hidden geometry she had only begun to glimpse. Across town, another person in Elon's meeting, a young executive, sat in his apartment staring at a blank wall. He had always prided himself on being a rationalist, a man of control and measurable outcomes. Yet now, he felt a subtle, almost disturbing sense that control was an illusion. Elon's words had cracked something inside him, something he had buried beneath spreadsheets and strategic plans. The truth was, he had been guided repeatedly, subtly, almost imperceptibly, and he had ignored it. Opportunities had appeared and vanished. Relationships had started and ended in ways that now seemed orchestrated rather than random. He realized with a jolt that perhaps he had been blind, too focused on controlling outcomes rather than recognizing them. Elon, meanwhile, retreated to his private space, a small, minimalist room filled with sketches of rockets, energy grids, and AI algorithms. He often retreated here to think, to connect the threads of human experience with the larger equations he lived with daily. He considered the people he had met, the collaborators who had shifted trajectories, the rivals whose challenges had forced him to innovate. Every encounter had been a vector, a directional force, pushing him toward outcomes he hadn't fully anticipated. And yet, he saw now that the same principle applied universally. Not just in business, not just in science, but in the most intimate, human aspects of life. Love, friendship, mentorship, even rivalry, it was all part of a grand design that he scribbled in his notebook. Recognize alignment. Act with awareness. Surrender without losing agency. Life is a system. You are a node. The forces that guide you are not chaotic. They are precise. Divine. Mathematical. Human connections are the ultimate vector of growth. The words felt almost prophetic, yet grounded in the logic he revered. He knew many would scoff, dismissing it as mystical nonsense. But he also knew that those who understood, those who recognized alignment when it appeared, could accelerate their lives in ways others could not imagine. As the night deepened, the engineer returned home, the young executive remained in contemplation, and somewhere in the city, countless lives moved forward, each unaware of the hidden algorithms shaping their destinies. Yet in that quiet, almost imperceptible intersection between chance and design, something had shifted. Elon Musk's words had planted a seed, a recognition that life, no matter how random it seemed, was rarely without purpose. And that realization, subtle though it was, had the power to change everything, because the shocking truth was not just that God, or the universe, or destiny matched people for a reason. The truth was that recognition itself was an act of creation. To see the pattern, to acknowledge it, to move in harmony with it, was to participate in the unfolding design, to contribute consciously to a system far greater than oneself. It was terrifying, because it demanded humility. It was exhilarating, because it promised transformation. It was the edge of understanding, the boundary between chaos and order, randomness and meaning. Elon, sitting alone in his room, stared at the ceiling, thinking about the next steps, not just for his projects, but for humanity. He understood that if people could grasp this principle, that life was not random, that encounters were purposeful, that connections carried divine weight, they could unlock potential beyond anything measurable. They could change the trajectory of not just individual lives, but society itself. And that was why he had said what he had. Not as a visionary merely speaking about rockets or AI, but as someone revealing a deeper truth about human existence, because every meeting, every conversation, every fleeting glance had significance. Every relationship was a vector, a force, a calculation in the cosmic equation. And those who recognized it, who acted consciously, who surrendered intelligently, were not just living. They were navigating destiny, guided by a force greater than themselves, toward outcomes that were simultaneously inevitable and miraculous. And that, Elon thought, smiling faintly, was the beginning.